There are people walking among us, functioning, capable, even successful, who are carrying a weight most people will never see. They smile at the right moments, they say the right things, they show up every day. But inside, there is a child who never felt safe at home. If you were raised by a toxic parent, this video is not about blame, it's not about anger, it's about finally understanding why you are the way you are, and why that is not your fault. Today, we're going to look at the psychology behind what happens when a child grows up in a home where love comes with conditions, where safety was unpredictable, and where the person who was supposed to protect you was also the source of your pain. This is the psychology of people raised by toxic parents. Before we go further, let's define what we mean by a toxic parent. This isn't about a parent who occasionally lost their temper. This isn't about someone who made mistakes, like all parents do. A toxic parent is one who consistently, over years, created an environment where a child felt unsafe, unseen, or unloved. They may have been controlling. They may have been emotionally absent. Some were verbally abusive, tearing down their child's confidence with words that cut deeper than any physical wound. Some were narcissistic, making everything about themselves, leaving the child to manage the parent's emotions rather than develop their own. And some were unpredictable, kind one moment, explosive the next, leaving the child in a constant state of walking on eggshells. What these parents share is not cruelty for cruelty's sake. Many of them were themselves wounded. Many believed they were doing their best. But impact matters more than intention. And the impact on a developing child's mind is profound, lasting, and scientifically measurable.
Wound number 1, hypervigilance. When you grow up in a home that is unpredictable, where a parent's mood can shift without warning, your brain learns to scan for danger constantly. Psychologists call this hypervigilance. It is not anxiety. It is not weakness. It is a survival response. One of the most sophisticated adaptations the human nervous system is capable of. Your brain, trying to protect you, rewired itself to stay alert, always watching, always calculating. The tone of a voice, the sound of footsteps in the hallway, the way a door closes, too hard or too quietly. As a child, this kept you safe. You became the person who could read the room before anyone else. You sensed a shift in energy seconds before anyone else noticed. That was not a flaw. That was intelligence born out of necessity. But here is what no one tells you. When the danger is gone, the system does not automatically turn off. As an adult, you carry this same hypervigilance into every room you enter. You overanalyze a colleague's tone in an email. You replay conversations, searching for the moment you said the wrong thing. You brace yourself for bad news even on good days, because somewhere deep in your nervous system, you learned that peace is always temporary. And you are exhausted. Not because something is wrong with you, but because your brain never received the message that the war is over. Wound number 2, the fear of abandonment. Children raised by toxic parents often experience love that is inconsistent. Some days, the parent is warm, present, almost magical. You feel seen, held, loved, and then, without warning, they are cold, distant, cruel, or simply gone. This inconsistency does something devastating to the developing attachment system. It does not teach the child that love is dangerous. It teaches something far more damaging, that love is unpredictable, that it can disappear at any moment for reasons you cannot control. So the child does what any intelligent being does. They adapt. They learn to hold on tighter, or they learn to let go before anyone can leave first. As adults, this fear of abandonment shapes everything. Relationships feel like a constant balancing act. Too close and you might get hurt. Too distant and you might lose them forever. You search for reassurance that is never quite enough. You interpret silence as rejection. You stay in relationships long past the point of health, because leaving feels like confirming what you always feared, that you are someone people eventually leave. This is not a character flaw. This is a wound, and it has a name. Wound number 3, chronic shame. There is an important distinction between guilt and shame. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am something bad. Toxic parents, often without realizing it, specialize in shame. Not the occasional correction of behavior, but the persistent, grinding message that the child themselves is the problem. You're too sensitive. You never do anything right. I don't know what's wrong with you. Why can't you just be normal? These words, spoken over years, do not stay in childhood. They become the voice inside your head. They become the standard against which you measure yourself, and always fall short. By adulthood, chronic shame becomes invisible. It hides behind perfectionism, behind the inability to accept a compliment, behind self-sabotage at the exact moment life starts going well, because some part of you does not believe you deserve it. It is not low self-esteem. Low self-esteem can be rebuilt with success and affirmation. Shame goes deeper. Shame says, even if I succeed, it does not change what I fundamentally am. Healing from shame is not about positive thinking. It is about learning, slowly, painstakingly, that the verdict handed down in childhood was wrong. Wound number 4, difficulty with boundaries. In a toxic household, the child's boundaries did not exist. Their feelings were dismissed. Their privacy was invaded without consequence. Their no was treated as defiance rather than communication. And their emotional needs were seen as inconveniences, or worse, as weapons to be used against them. So they grew into adults who do not know what a boundary is, let alone how to hold one. They say yes when they mean no. They give until they are hollow. They feel a sharp, irrational guilt for having needs, as though needing something from another person is an imposition, a burden, a flaw. Or they build walls instead of boundaries, total withdrawal, emotional unavailability. Because if no one gets close, no one can hurt you. Both responses make complete sense, and both come at an enormous cost. Wound number 5, a distorted sense of self. This is perhaps the deepest wound of all. Healthy development requires a simple but profound thing: a parent who sees the child as they actually are, not as an extension of themselves, not as a project to be perfected, not as a source of emotional supply, but as a separate, whole, worthy human being. When that mirror is distorted, when the parent projects their own wounds, their own fears, their own unmet needs onto the child grows up without a clear answer to the most fundamental question of human life: who am I? They define themselves through achievement, because that was the only thing that earned approval, or through rebellion, because that was the only way to feel like an individual, or they disappear entirely into the role the family assigned them, the responsible one, the difficult one, the invisible one. And beneath all of those roles, there is a person who was never given the freedom to simply exist, to be curious about themselves, to discover who they are without it being about someone else's needs. That person is still there, but they have been waiting a very long time to be found. Now let's talk about what this actually looks like, not in theory, but in your daily life, in your relationships, in the quiet moments when you are alone with yourself, because the wounds of childhood do not announce themselves. They show up disguised as personality traits, as quirks, as just the way I am. But they are not just the way you are. They are the way you learn to survive. You apologize constantly for taking up space, for having an opinion, for existing in a way that might inconvenience someone else. You say sorry before you have even finished the sentence, because in your house, keeping the peace required you to make yourself very, very small. You struggle to enjoy good things without waiting for them to collapse. A promotion arrives, and instead of celebration, you feel dread, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because happiness in your childhood was never fully safe. Good things always seem to come with conditions or with a cost. You are drawn to people who are emotionally unavailable. Not because you enjoy pain, but because emotional unavailability feels like home. It is familiar. And the nervous system mistakes familiarity for safety, even when the two have nothing to do with each other. You feel responsible for other people's emotions, not just your own. If someone in the room seems tense, your mind immediately runs through every possible thing you might have done to cause it, even when it has absolutely nothing to do with you. You absorbed the responsibility for your parents' emotional state for so long that it became automatic. You work extraordinarily hard to prove your worth, and somehow, it is never enough. Not because you are not achieving, but because the goalpost was set by someone whose approval was never truly available. You are still trying to earn something that was always supposed to be freely given. You have profound difficulty asking for help. Help means vulnerability. Vulnerability, in your experience, was not safe. It was something that could be used against you, dismissed or punished. So you learned to handle everything alone, and now you do not know how to stop. You feel, at times, like an outsider in your own life, like you are performing a version of yourself rather than living as yourself. Like there's a glass wall between you and genuine connection, and you built it so gradually that you do not even remember when it went up. And perhaps the cruelest part of all, you often cannot tell the difference between your own authentic feelings and the feelings you learn to perform for other people's comfort. Let me say this clearly. None of this means something is broken in you. These are adaptations, brilliant, resourceful, creative adaptations from a child who did whatever they had to do to survive an environment they did not choose and could not escape. The problem is, you are not a child anymore. You are safe now, even if your nervous system has not caught up to that fact. And those adaptations that once protected you are now costing you something precious. They are costing you real connection. They are costing you inner peace. They are costing you the life you would choose if you truly believed you were allowed to choose it. Here is what the science tells us. And this is the part that matters most. The brain is not fixed. Neuroplasticity, the brain's extraordinary ability to form new connections throughout life, means that the patterns laid down in childhood are not permanent sentences. They are grooves worn into a path from years of repetition. And with the right conditions, new paths can be built. Not quickly, not painlessly, but genuinely, measurably, profoundly. The first step is the one you are taking right now, awareness. You cannot change what you cannot name. And naming what happened to you, not as an excuse, but as information, is the beginning of everything. It is the moment you stop confusing your wounds with your identity. The second step is separating yourself from the story you were given. You are not the shame your parent placed on you. You are not the fear of abandonment, the hypervigilance, the people-pleasing. Those are layers, protective layers that formed around something far more essential, a self that survived, a self that is still there, still whole, still worth knowing. The third step is choosing the right support. Trauma-informed therapy, particularly approaches like EMDR, internal family systems, and somatic therapy, has shown measurable results in helping survivors of childhood emotional wounds rewire their nervous systems, regulate their emotions, and rebuild a genuine sense of self. You do not have to process this alone. In fact, healing happens in relationship, in the experience of being seen, heard, and responded to with consistency and care. The very thing that was missing. You were never supposed to carry this alone, and the fact that you are still here, still searching, still willing to look honestly at your own story, that is not weakness. That is the beginning of something real. To everyone watching this who recognized themselves in these words, you survived something that should never have been yours to survive. The fact that you are still here, still seeking, still trying to understand yourself, that is not nothing. That is everything. Healing does not mean forgetting. It does not mean forgiving on someone else's timeline. It means choosing, one day at a time, to stop letting the past write your future. You are not who they said you were. You never were. If this video helped you understand yourself a little better today, share it with someone who might need to hear it too. And I will see you in the next one.